Chapter 6. Timmy. A family, the Smiths, moves into a new home which seems like the perfect place for them. They were excited to start their new life in the spacious and well-maintained home. But soon after they moved in, strange things began to happen. Mrs. Smith: "Honey, have you seen my keys? I can't seem to find them anywhere." Mr. Smith: "No, I haven't seen them. Maybe you left them at the office." Mrs. Smith: "No, I'm sure I had them when I got home." The Smiths brushed it off as a simple mistake and went about their day. But as the days went by, the strange occurrences became more frequent and harder to ignore. Mrs. Smith: "I swear, I put this vase right here on the shelf. How did it end up on the floor?" Mr. Smith: "I don't know. Maybe it was the kids. They've been running around a lot lately." Mrs. Smith: "No, I don't think it was the kids. I feel like someone or something is moving things around." Mr. Smith: "Don't be ridiculous. It's just our imagination playing tricks on us." But the Smiths couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about their new home. They decided to do some research and discovered that the previous occupants of the home had died under mysterious circumstances. Mrs. Smith: "I can't believe it. The previous occupants of this house died in a fire, and now all these strange things are happening." Mr. Smith: "It's just a coincidence. There's no way the house is haunted." Mrs. Smith: "But what if it is? We have to do something about it." Mr. Smith: "Fine, let's call in a paranormal investigator and see what they have to say." The paranormal investigator comes to the house and confirms that the house is indeed haunted by the spirits of the previous occupants. They explain that the spirits are still tied to the house and are causing the strange occurrences. Paranormal investigator: "The spirits are still tied to this house. They haven't been able to move on and they're causing these strange occurrences." Mrs. Smith: "What can we do about it?" Paranormal investigator: "We can try to communicate with the spirits and help them move on, but it's not going to be easy." The investigator conducts a seance and manages to communicate with the spirits. They learn that the spirits were trapped in the house because they were unable to let go of their possessions. Spirit: "We can't move on because we can't let go of our possessions. We were so attached to them that we're still here." Mrs. Smith: "Is there anything we can do to help you move on?" Spirit: "Yes, you need to help us let go of our possessions. Only then can we finally be at peace." The Smiths, with the help of the investigator, go through the house and find the possessions that the spirits were attached to. They hold a ceremony to release the spirits and help them move on. Mrs. Smith: "We've gathered all of the possessions that the spirits were attached to. We're ready to help them move on." Mr. Smith: "I hope this works. I can't take much more of these strange occurrences." Investigator: "We're ready to begin the ceremony. We'll start by lighting these candles and then we'll release the spirits one by one." The ceremony begins, and as the spirits are released, the strange occurrences start to decrease. The house becomes quieter and less active, and the Smiths finally feel like they can relax in their own home. Mrs. Smith: "I can't believe it. The house is finally at peace." Mr. Smith: "I'm glad it's over. I never want to go through something like that again." Investigator: "I'm glad we were able to help. The spirits are finally at peace and they won't be causing any more trouble." The Smiths thanked the investigator and settled into their new home. They were relieved that the spirits were finally at peace and that they could live in their home without fear. But as they went about their daily lives, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Mrs. Smith: "I know the spirits are gone, but I still feel like someone is watching me." Mr. Smith: "It's probably just your imagination. The investigator said that the spirits were finally at peace." Mrs. Smith: "I hope you're right. I just want to feel safe in our own home." As the weeks went by, the feeling of being watched persisted. The Smiths started to notice strange noises and shadows in the corners of their eyes. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was still not right in the house. Mrs. Smith: "I can't take it anymore. I know something is still here. We have to do something about it." Mr. Smith: "Fine. We'll call the investigator back and see what he has to say." The investigator comes back and conducts another investigation. This time he finds that there is another spirit in the house, one that was not released during the previous ceremony. Investigator: "I found another spirit in the house, one that was not released during the ceremony." Mrs. Smith: "What can we do about it?" Investigator, we'll have to conduct another ceremony to release this spirit. It will be more difficult than the previous one, but it's the only way to truly banish it from the house. The Smiths were hesitant, but they knew they had to do whatever it takes to make their home safe again. The investigator conducts the ceremony, and with great effort, the final spirit is released, and the house is finally at peace. Mrs. Smith, I can't believe it. The house is finally at peace and we can live here without fear. Mr. Smith, I'm glad it's over. I just hope we never have to go through something like this again. Investigator, I'm glad we were able to help. The spirits are finally at peace, and they won't be causing any more trouble. The Smiths thanked the investigator and settled into their new home, finally able to live in peace. But as they went about their daily lives, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was still not right. They had finally released the spirits from the house, but they began to notice that their youngest child, Timmy, was acting strange. He would talk to himself in an empty room and would have terrifying nightmares. Mrs. Smith, I'm worried about Timmy. He's been acting strange lately, and he's been having nightmares. Mr. Smith, I'm sure it's just a phase. Kids have vivid imaginations. But as the days went by, Timmy's behavior became more concerning. He would scream in the middle of the night, claiming that there was something in his room. Mrs. Smith, I can't take it anymore. We have to do something about Timmy's behavior. Mr. Smith, fine. We'll call the investigator back and see if he can help. The investigator comes back to the house, and during his investigation, he discovers that the final spirit that was released during the ceremony was not a benevolent one. It was a malevolent spirit that had attached itself to Timmy. Investigator, I'm sorry to say this, but the final spirit that was released during the ceremony was not a benevolent one. It's a malevolent spirit, and it's attached itself to Timmy. Mrs. Smith, oh my God, what can we do? Paranormal investigator, we'll have to perform another ceremony to banish the spirit from Timmy, but I have to warn you, it will be dangerous and it's not guaranteed to work. The Smiths were desperate and willing to do whatever it takes to save their son. They agreed to the ceremony, and the investigator begins the ritual. But as the ritual begins, the spirit fights back with all its power, causing the house to shake and objects to fly off the shelves. Mrs. Smith, it's not working. The spirit is too strong. Mr. Smith, we have to keep going. We have to save Timmy. The ritual continues, but the spirit becomes more powerful, and the Smiths soon realize that they won't be able to banish it. Investigator, I'm sorry, but the only way to save Timmy is to sacrifice yourselves to the spirit. Mrs. Smith, we'll do whatever it takes to save our son. Mr. Smith, we'll do it together. The Smiths, with heavy hearts, give themselves up to the spirit in order to save their son. The spirit takes over the Smiths' bodies and leaves Timmy unharmed. The investigator manages to banish the spirit, but at a great cost. The Smiths were gone, and their son was left alone in the house, forever haunted by the memory of what happened, and the knowledge that his parents sacrificed themselves to save him. The house may be at peace, but the Smiths paid a great price for it, and their son was left alone, forever haunted by the memory of his family's sacrifice. It's important to consider the possible consequences of interacting with the paranormal or trying to banish spirits. Sometimes the cost may be too high.